Alright, so I'm finally doing a video on the $88 quad that I've been showing up on my Instagram, and the reason it's been taking a while is for one, I went on a trip. I was gone for about a week, and then I also wanted to make sure I got a bunch of flights in here before I made any sort of a video talking about this in any detail. I'm not exactly sure how much more content I'm going to create on this product, because I'm sensing there's not that much interest in this. I'll put up what I paid for this here. It was $88 and some cents, plus shipping, and I think there's like a import fee or whatever. And so I'll put that up on screen. So out of pocket, it would cost me $104 and some change. And then I've added some things here. I'll explain what's been added. But yeah, I'm not really sure how much interest there is in something like this, because there's a lot of, under $100 build videos out there, right? Some of them have like 1 million views. Is kind of crazy. But if you go to any of those videos and you actually look at the parts list, you either find that the cost of those parts is a lot more now, or you can't find the parts at all. So that advertised, under $100 build is, after you add up all the parts and everything, is actually closer to $200, or you can't find the parts at all. So this here is kind of this alternative of like, oh, get a quad for under $100 plus shipping, and you basically have the bones of a pretty decent 5-inch quad. But you have to, you got to watch this whole video to understand what you're getting here. And so that's what I'm going to try and explain, and hopefully I haven't lost any of you guys yet, because I know there's going to be a lot of you guys that probably are already gone and haven't watched the whole video, and they're probably asking me these questions now in the comments, and I'm just going to respond, watch the video, because I'm going to try and cover all those type of questions in the video, so please keep watching. So for one thing, I don't know how they're able to sell this for the money that they're receiving, $88. If you look at the individual parts here, so what we have are some pretty decent motors. So these are the 2306 2450 kV motors. These motors, you've seen them before on my channel. They are on the Wizard TS215 that came out like 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, all these parts are really old. They've been around forever. And in fact, they're using the old Wizard X220S box, and there's a reason for that, because they're basically the same parts. So they obviously have changed the frame. The frame is different than the original Wizard X220S, but you have the same camera. I think it's a CCD full-size camera, and you got the same stack. So you have the Omnibus F4 V3 and the 30 amp 4-in-1 BL Heli SCSC. On the Wizard, you have like an extra board for like some LEDs, and then it's got the same video transmitter as well. It's like some generic 600 milliwatt video transmitter, the VT50804 or something like that. Anyway, and it's got an MCX antenna here in the back. So it's basically the same parts, but the Wizard is like way more expensive. And if you go on Banggood and look for these parts, they're like, the motors are $23. The flight controller is $54. The camera's $27. I think the 400EC is like $55. So I don't know how they're able to put this together in the current environment for the money. It's just kind of crazy. And the frame is pretty decent too. It's not, some people were saying on Instagram, oh, that frame, 3D printer frame is a little bit stronger. I doubt that. If you want to challenge me on that one, let's see if your 3D printed frame is stronger than this one. This is regular carbon fiber on this one. Nothing really fancy about this frame. It's pretty typical. I don't know what this is a copy of, but it's decent. I mean, there's no flex in the arms or anything. It's a standard like 5mm arm or whatever that typically a lot of 5-inch frames come with. So nothing really special. The cut isn't the greatest. Like the arms aren't chamfered or anything like that. So they're using like the cheapest frame possible. Obviously, keep the cost down. So you're not gonna get the nice chamfered, edges and that kind of stuff. But who cares? It's a frame. it's going to get beat up. That's fine. So the biggest thing about this is, the thing that I want you to understand is we're basically paying for a bunch of parts that have been pre-assembled into this sort of like a framework, basically it's like you got the bones of a 5-inch quad, but it doesn't come with any support. If you're looking for a warranty and support and all that kind of stuff, I doubt you're going to get that from this company, or if they're going to even respond to your emails. They might, but it's not going to be anything like you're going to get from like iFlight or GetRC or any of the big companies out there that have support channels. That's what you're paying for. That's the extra cost in an iFlight quad. When you look at the Nazgul V2, whatever, I think that's like going to cost you about actually I haven't checked it lately. I think it's closer to $200 now. It's like $180, $190 for the analog version. So yeah, but that extra money you're paying for is extra support, and also their parts are higher quality than these parts here. So it's a really low cost quad, but you're just basically paying for parts that have already been pre-assembled. So this is where I'm coming. Basically this is the ultimate under $100 build that you don't have to build yourself. Now, you still have to do the setup. It does come with like some version of Betaflight 4.3 RC. I think it's RC3 on here. And it had no tune. It's just like default settings. So I didn't even bother with that. I would not recommend using these props. These are complete trash. Do not use these props. There were a few people that wrote reviews on this on the store that I bought this from, that they burned the ESCs. And that is because they probably used these props here and they did not make an adjustment for the motor KV on these motors, which you really should do, because these 30 amp ESCs aren't really going to be able to handle this motor. The original Wizard here, the X220S, came with a 2206 motor, I think at like 2300 kV. So a smaller motor, lower kV. And even in a lot of those cases, the ESCs couldn't handle that motor that well either. And it had a lot to do with the configuration of the Betaflight setup and everything. And I had a problem with that particular model as well on my sample. So I already knew all this stuff going in, like, oh, this is basically the same parts, and this motor KV is way too high. If you look at the Eachine TS215 that this motor came on, it came with 40 amp ESCs that bursted to like 50 amps, I believe, and those were like 32 BDSCs. So you have to reduce the motor output limit on Betaflight here, and which is what I did. I reduced it to 90%, which basically lowers the virtual KV of this from like 2450 to like around 2300, and through about 10-12 flights, I think, no problems in the ESC. I haven't had any desyncs or the ESCs still work. They haven't burned. We'll have to see how long that lasts. And I did use a different prop, of course, too. This is some Dow prop, I believe. I'll put up on the screen here what it is. I forget. This is a generic 5-inch prop. It's from Fox here. It's a good prop. Not too much pitch, it's fairly efficient. I get like 5-minute flights on this 1300 4S with that, motor output limit. So I'll just flash some stuff that I did here on the screen in terms of my setup. I will put a CLI dump down in the video description. So if you are, thinking about getting this and you know how to use a CLI dump, then you can use the tune that I put on here, which is not really a tune that I did. So what I did here, and again, keep watching as you have to listen to the whole explanation. I flashed the latest Betaflight RC6 on here, which some people are going to say, oh, there's a bug in there. It's a bug for the ICM gyro. This flight controller comes with the BMI 270 gyro, which the RC6 bug does not affect. RC7 is out now, so you'll probably just go ahead and use RC7, and the CLI dump should still work on RC7. So just update the flight controller to the latest 4.3 RC, which you're going to need because I have in my setup, I have RPM filter enabled. So I basically flashed the latest RC on there. And then what I did was I used presets that were built into the configurator. I put in the filters for the BMI gyro as one of the presets, and then I just grabbed a generic 5-inch tune. I think it was one of the official ones, the first one on there. I didn't really care. I just wanted something that I could just slap on there because I didn't want to spend any time tuning this. And then I just slapped on some rates as well. Since I put an Express LRS receiver in here, I did also put in some settings for Express LRS to handle the lower update rate, the packet rate for that. And then in terms of the setup of the hardware, I did add a Express LRS receiver. You want to use I forget which UART it is. I put up on the screen here. The first one that I used did not work, so I used that other UART for the video transmitter smart audio instead. And that's another thing that this has basically the same issue that Eachine did with their video transmitter. They did not set up. They removed the wire for the smart audio. It's right there in the plug, but it doesn't exist. So I just grabbed another wire from another plug of that same pitch, and I just stuffed it in there, and then I soldered that to the UART for smart audio, and I set that up, and that's in the CLI dump as well. So smart, it just uses the VTX. I'm sorry, yeah, it just uses the VTX table of smart audio version 2, which is pretty generic, and that worked totally fine. Flying on race band 1, like I think 200 milliwatts, whatever, not a big deal. But if you don't want to do the smart audio, you don't have to. The button still works. You can check out the documentation. I'll put the links to like the wiring diagram and all that kind of stuff for the flight controller and the ESC and everything up on the screen here, and also link it down in the video description if you want to see how everything's wired up. But yeah, I just wired up a receiver. I wired up the smart audio, but those are, smart audio is optional. The button will still work, but you probably want to do that anyway. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. And then I used the presets. I did also flash the latest BlueJay firmware to the ESCs, like 0.016, I believe. And I did enable 48 kilohertz just to give it a little bit more efficiency with this motor setup. And I think that worked really well. And I enabled RPM filter. So those are all the really basic stuff. I mean, it literally took me like 10 minutes to set up everything. I didn't do any tuning on it. I just used all the presets. And so you can either watch that extra video. I'll link that video down in the video description. It's basically a screen recording of every step I took in terms of the settings that I put in. So if you want to actually see what I did, you can watch that. But everything that I did in the recording is in the CLI dump. So you can just get the CLI dump and flash the latest RC, 4.3 RC7, or whatever's out now. Paste in my CLI dump, and you'll have all my settings. And then I just printed this little generic 3D mount here for the Runcam 5 Orange. I couldn't find anything that matched this frame, so I just kind of zip tied something and just kind of hacked together something here. Not really the best match here, but there's nothing really out for this frame, so I just kind of I'll link this in the video description if you really want it. But I mean, I think it flies totally fine. Like, I put in some rates that I don't usually fly, but I just wanted to do like something quick and easy. I think the rates on the yaw axis for those preset rates are not so it's kind of twitchy. I think I need more expo on that one for me, but not a big deal. It flies fine. I didn't have any desyncs, any crashes from the ESCs failing, no fires, nothing like that. So, for those of you that are expecting that should happen, it might happen if you just buy it out of the box and not realize that you have motors that are too big for these 30 amp ESCs. I think that's the biggest drawback for the setup here, is if you're trying to maximize this motor, you really need different ESCs. You need like a 50 amp ESC for this motor. It's a pretty high kV power draw motor. But if you just, dial it back a little bit, it's a perfectly capable flyer. You can do, fly freestyle, and, it's totally fine. And for the money, I think it's totally okay. It's not really, what you're really paying for is just the parts, and they've actually just kind of put everything together. But you have to understand all the little limitations that I've talked about in the video and account for that. And mainly it's the fact that you want to lower the motor output limit for this motor and this KV, and do not use the props that it came with. That's pretty much it. So I'm not sure how much more content I'm going to do on this one. I probably will convert this to DJI because I just don't like flying analog. And I'm just going to use this as like a cruiser quad, a basher quad. Probably put a different mount on here as well. But yeah, this setup here, I get 5-minute flight times on this 1300 4S, and it's totally fine as like a backup quad. Now, if you're a beginner or first timer and you want to just buy a cheap quad, but you don't know how to do any of this stuff, then I probably would say don't do it, because you're going to probably make a mistake somewhere. And I think the biggest mistakes that people make is they think that they can just get this and then slap on these really crappy props, and then they burn an ESC. And that's because they not really, the people that created this setup here, then they weren't really taking into account the overall, setup here of the motors, and not accounting for what you need for those ESCs. It actually has too big of a motor for those ESCs. They need like a 2206 or 2205 motor at like 2300 kV for that 30 amp ESC. They went with a too big of a motor. That's the biggest drawback of this setup. As long as you dial back, you're good to go. Anyway, I'm going to just show you the narrated flight. You can hear the props and me doing flippy floppies or whatever. You'll see that it flies totally fine. Obviously, it needs to be, the tune needs to be refined some more. But I'm not going to spend too much more time on this, because I don't expect that a lot of you are that interested in this quad anyway. But if you are, give it a thumbs up. If I see, a whole bunch of likes and a lot of requests down in the video, in the comments, that you want to see more content on this, or pid tunes or whatever, let me know down in the comments. If there's a lot of interest, then I'll make more content. If not, then I'll just move on to other stuff. So, but yeah, if the question you're wondering is, will it fly? Will it just die in the first plug-in? If you put it together the way I did, it's fine. If you don't know what you're doing and you just, plug it in right away, use the props that it came with and just send it, you might have a problem. So just keep that in mind. Okay, that's going to do it for this one. Talk to you guys later. So I'm going to fly this around me so you guys can hear what the props sound like. These are not the stock props, not the stock tune. I redid everything, but I probably talked about it already. Narrow field of view on this camera is kind of a drawback, but you can always replace the lens. Foxeer and Runcam, they sell a lot of M12 lenses that you could easily replace this with. Just have to refocus it. Let's do a speed run here. So I did do a reduction of the motor output, because I think the KB of this motor is a little too high. So I'm getting these lines in the video now. Didn't see that before. I got a gardener working behind me here. I think the lines in the video are probably because the capacitor isn't big enough. I actually didn't take a good look at that. But they don't seem to happen on punch-outs. It's kind of interesting. It might be interference from something else. There is a camera right above me here that I just noticed. Right here. That is probably some sort of Wi-Fi there. I think that's a camera. A little bit of prop washouts. I did do tune based on just some, what was it, presets. I didn't do any tuning. I just loaded up some presets. Not sure if I probably showed that already or talked about it already. And these rates and everything are just, everything is like not anything I'm used to, so take that with a grain of salt. Low battery warning. This is power loops. I mean, you know, I'm able to do freestyle on this, no problem. I just, I think the camera angle or the field of view on the camera lens is just a bit on the narrow side. I'd recommend getting something or swapping that out. But it's like a, you know, I think they cost about 10 bucks, $9, $10 for a lens. I'll link some of them in the description if I can remember. But I'm running a 1300 4S, nothing fancy here. So I have done several flights already. I didn't record all my flights. I'm getting close to the end of the battery here. I'm getting these voltage sags, you can see. Low battery warning. I don't think I adjusted that. It's probably whatever the Betaflight default is, 3.5 volts per cell, and then the little warning comes up. I'll just cruise around a little bit more here, get like a getting like a 5-minute flight in. Alrighty, I think that would do it. Didn't blow up. You can do a little bit of freestyle with the proper settings, of course, and it's not gonna blow up on you. All right, let me go ahead and land it.